Reid, who said, "A dream written down with a date becomes a goal broken down into steps becomes a plan, and a plan backed by action makes your dreams come true." Hi there, my name is Christopher D'Aramani, and I help authors go from blank page to finished first draft to published book with ease. And one of the ways I do that is by helping authors set a deadline and designing a roadmap for success, a plan, if you will. But it all boils down to the deadline. If you don't have a deadline, it really doesn't matter what you're doing. You're probably not going to get to that end goal that you want, which typically in the first chunk is that finished first draft. Because once that finished first draft is in your hands, you can do all kinds of really amazing things. So I want to sort of break that down a little bit, because that formula for success truly is simple. There's nothing challenging about it at all. You simply take a dream, which is writing my book. I build a plan, which is that roadmap for success I mentioned. I add a deadline based on my word count per hour, based on a couple of other criterias, and then I implement that plan, which is the action. And when I do all of those things, and I do them in the right order, and I achieve that deadline, my first draft is complete, which is the hallmark of success for that first section of getting my book written and published. Can't do anything until I have a first draft, right? Really can't. So the reality is that if I remove any single part of this equation, failure is not only obvious, it's inevitable. Because without a plan, how am I going to get there? I have no idea. Without a deadline, there's no real impetus to make it happen. And without that plan, taking action on what? I don't know. I'm really at a loss. So it all starts, of course, with that dream. If you're like me, you probably have dozens of ideas for books you want to write. So figure out which the first one is, and then build the plan, set a deadline, and then execute the plan. That's really all there is to it. So let's break it down, okay? Which I think I already did. First comes the dream, writing that first draft of your fiction book. Then comes the plan, which is that roadmap for success, where you answer all those questions. Who's this book for? Why is this book so important for me to write? When will I write it? How will I make the time to write it? All those questions get answered while you're building that roadmap for success. And then the deadline. The deadline is my favorite part, because this is where I get to play with manuscript math, which is simply taking how many hours I write times my hourly average word count and dividing that by the number of, dividing that into the rough word count for that book. So we'll talk about that momentarily as well. And then, of course, action. This is the big one, because this is where most people fall down. Building a plan, setting a deadline, those are all really easy things. Your roadmap for success, you can probably build that in a couple of hours in an afternoon. You can take longer if you like, but if you really want to push through it, you can probably get through all of that work in an afternoon. No problem. Setting a deadline, again, easy. We set deadlines for things all the time, and then we watch them travel past us as we float down the river of life, wondering why that deadline came and went and we still don't have a book. It's because we fell down on the action plan, right? So this is the part that trips people up most, and it's also probably, I would argue, one of the easiest things to fix. And we fix that problem by making success simple, making success easy. So setting a goal, a realistic goal for your first draft, and I'll come to that again, as I said, in a minute. We need to determine, of course, what our average hourly word count is, and there are exercises to make that calculation really simple. Then we need to find the holes, or actually we need to make the holes in our daily schedule and schedule time to write in those blocks. Because we don't find the time to do anything. We make the time for things that are important to us. And as I say all the time, if you're not making time for your writing, it's because you're not valuing it above whatever else you're doing in your day. So that can be a harsh reality to admit to sometimes, but the reality is we do make time for the things that are important to us. So if you're not making time for your writing, time to ask yourself why. Then we get to use manuscript math after we figured out a couple of those things to determine precisely the number of writing days it will take to complete that first draft. Because until I know what holes in my schedule can be used to make the writing, manuscript math simply isn't possible yet. Then we, as I said earlier, we need to make those appointments, and more importantly, do the action part, keeping those appointments with ourselves, doing the writing like we said we would do, whether we feel like it or not. And then, of course, there's always going to be extra time in a day, so do the responsible thing in terms of getting your first draft done, which would be whenever you have spare time, whether it's 5 minutes, 50 minutes, an hour, it doesn't matter. Take that extra time and focus on writing, because you can get a lot done in 5, 10, 15 minutes, a lot more than you probably think you can if you just sit down, focus for that short period of time. Another thing you'll probably want to do, and I highly encourage you to do, enroll your family and your friends in the fact that you're writing this book and that this is really, really important to you. Because if you don't enroll them in the process, odds are they're going to get angry up with you, they're liable to get upset with you because you're not making time for them in the way they think you ought to. So it's really easy to head that problem off at the pass by simply enrolling them in this process that you know is going to be, a finite period of time, but that this is really, really important to you. So make sure that they're buying into the fact that this is important to you. And when you do all of these things, and ideally you do them in this order, what will happen with your family and your friends is that once they see you taking this seriously, that not only did you say that writing this book was important to you, but you're actually taking the actions that prove to them that you're taking this seriously, they'll take it seriously too. And they will actually give you that time. They'll encourage you. They will help you. Like, so for example, enrolling them into, hey, I want to write every day at 8 o'clock for, I don't know, call it an hour. I want to write for 1 hour at 8 o'clock every day. Enroll them into being your accountability partners. Make sure they help you achieve that every single day. And I want to give you a crystal clear, solid example of how easily this can work. A really sort of average length for a non-fiction book that is solving a problem for a specific group of people is around, 25 to 30,000 words. So if you write 500 words per hour and you write 1 hour per day, manuscript math says it's going to take you 60 writing days to complete that first draft. Now, 60 days is pretty cool. 2 months of writing and you have a first draft done. That's awesome. But it can actually be done a whole lot faster. And here's how. If you simply double the hours you write per day, still maintaining that 500 words per hour, it's going to cut your first draft time in half. This is all simple math, simple stuff. And then if you do something else and you double your word count for those 2 hours, you cut your time in half again. And this is pretty easy to do when you do things like dictation and transcription. That technology has come a really long way, so it makes it a lot easier, especially if you're more comfortable more comfortable speaking your book out loud than you are typing it out loud. I'm old school. I like the keyboard. It's how I grew up writing and it's how I love to write. But I think that if you try other methods, they may work better for you than doing it old school. And when you do that, again, it's just simple math. You're cutting your writing time again in half. And so what becomes possible writing 2 hours a day, only 500 words per hour, is you're able to complete an entire first draft in 15 days. This is how simple it can be. This is how quick it can be. So long as you take the time to develop that plan of action, so you know all the answers to all the questions, so that when you sit down to write, that's all you're doing, writing. Everything else has already been predetermined for you. It keeps it really, really simple. And if you're looking for an outside accountability partner, then I would highly encourage you to join me for Writing Power Hour, which goes on every day at 4 o'clock Pacific. And this simply is a time we get together on Zoom. At the top of the hour, we share like 2 minutes of what do I want to accomplish in this hour? What is my goal for this specific hour of writing? And then we go off, we do whatever we said we were going to do, and we come back and we report out at the end. Was I successful? Was I not successful? If I was successful, fantastic. Was I able to go further? If so, yay, love that. And if you weren't able to accomplish everything you wanted to accomplish, then we have a brief sort of discussion of why. And so we can solve that problem for tomorrow. Because the easier we make this on ourselves, the faster and easier our book is to write. And that's the whole point of all of this stuff, is to make this vision of ours come true. And the deadline using manuscript math is an amazing way to make sure this gets done and gets done quickly. So I hope that was helpful. If it is, I would love for you to like it and share it with your family and your friends. I would also love for you to connect with me on places like LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, all those good platforms. And all of the links to my social media platforms can be found at sleekbio.com/Christopher. So if you're one of those people like a friend of mine who despises deadlines, I would ask you to simply take a deep breath, rethink that, reevaluate that concept of a deadline, and ask yourself why you dislike it so much. Because it truly can be one of the most empowering tools in your toolkit. It really can. And I always encourage you to do what I do and make that deadline uncomfortably close. That's really important, because the thing with deadlines, if I set a deadline for a year to write my first draft, I'm going to spend probably 11 months doing nothing while I'm talking about writing, thinking about writing, making plans, but not doing anything. Because until that deadline is imminent, all of this stuff is meaningless. So cut out all the wasted time. Make sure that your deadline is uncomfortably close so that from the day you set it, you're already under pressure to make it. It's a really effective way to get it done. So with that, I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day, and I will see you again tomorrow at 3 o'clock. Bye for now.